Okay, so we are live. So we're not live on YouTube and we are about to go live on radio. You're welcome to the show that is all about the women, that is for the women, and talks about many issues that women face. And of course, we have our guest majorly as women. But you know how we always say that it's not just for the women, because again, the women do not exist in isolation in the world. So you are very welcome if it's your first time tuning into Soul Sisters on Smooth 98.1. We are the station that loves music, loves life, and loves the women. And we have an hour-long show dedicated to them called Soul Sisters. So, hey, there is a seat for you with your name on it. We have different ways that you can be a part of the show. We've got WhatsApp, we have the phone line. We're live on YouTube, and our channel is youtube.com/smooth91FM Lagos, where you simply go to our YouTube and search for Smooth 91 FM Lagos. While you're looking for all the shows that have been streamed live, I think you should subscribe so that whenever we go live, you will not miss out on what it is that we have. And then there is Twitter, which is very active at Smooth91 FM. In case you have something on your mind that you'd like to get out, just make sure you tag us at Smooth91 FM. And currently the hashtag is Soul Sisters 981. Well, we have the WhatsApp line as a call line as well. So in case you want to ask a question later on, yes, that's the number you can dial. And I bet that at some point in the conversation, you will have a question or the other, because today we are talking about feminism and some other things involved. And I do have as my guest someone who is very, very proud and always about the journey of feminism. In fact, in her book, which is Demand and Supply, she said she is proud to be called a feminist with the capital letter F, something we will get into later on. She is a feminist activist. She is a policy advocate. She is a social change philanthropy practitioner. She's a writer. She's got many books, and she is a lot of things. She wears many hats. She is the founder of Above Whispers Media Foundation, and it is a foundation that specializes in leadership development. And she is the former First Lady of Ekiti State. Please welcome with me my guest this morning, Her Excellency Irelu Bisi Adeleye Fayemi. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you for being my guest this morning. It's a pleasure. And I cannot wait to dig into a lot of things about this topic and many of what you have written, as well as your interesting thoughts and your advocacy journey. In fact, we can as well get right into it, because there is a part of your book, which is Demand and Supply, that I quoted a bit. It's in the introduction. You said, and I quote, "I am a feminist. Please note the capital F. I have always been one, right from my early years, when I realized that I would always be regarded as a second-class citizen if I did not use my voice." And you will agree with me that in this age and time, feminism sort of has a bad tag, a bad ring to it, because of many misconceptions about it. So let's start with what you define feminism as, or what you think feminism is.
Thank you very much. Well, my own definition of feminism is that it's a global struggle against all forms of patriarchal oppression. We live in societies that are deeply patriarchal, not just our own societies here in Nigeria and the African continent, but globally. It's just that in other parts of the world, feminists have had to come up with different ways of engaging with these patriarchal institutions, norms, and values. So patriarchy shapes our lives in so many ways, through institutions, processes, and systems, that are controlled by men. So whether you're talking about political systems, economic systems, cultural, religious, social, technological, all these systems are controlled by men, and the women, they co-opt into helping them sustain these systems to ensure that one gender remains superior to the other, and the other gender continues to be a second-class citizen throughout their life cycle. So as a feminist, I believe that my duty is to understand what all this means and how it plays out on a day-to-day basis, and then commit myself to challenging these norms and values and practices, most of which are negative. And if they can't be dismantled, at least question them and then find ways in which we can have societies that are more equitable, that are fairer, and where there's justice for everyone, both women and men. And where the value that is placed on a boy child is not more than that placed on a girl child, or the value placed on a man is not more than that placed on a woman. So that, in a nutshell, is my definition of feminism.
Before I get to asking you how you started your journey into feminism and the advocacy, because you mentioned that you, for as long as you can remember in your early years, you've been a feminist, I would like to ask how you separate the definition of feminism and you correct the misconception that some have that feminism is misandry.
Feminism is not misandry. Misandry is a hatred of men. To the best of my knowledge, that is not what the feminist movement is all about. The feminist movement is against, as I said, patriarchal institutions, norms, and values that men perpetuate and put in place, with the collaboration of quite a lot of women who serve as gatekeepers. We have no business being misandrist because it does not serve any purpose. There are men who can be feminists as well. We've had many debates about that over the years. Any man who is sympathetic to the demands that we make as feminists is welcome to be part of our movement. But every woman who is a feminist has a man in her life, a father, a brother, a son, a husband. And so does it mean that we are going to go through life hating the men in our lives? What we are saying is we are challenging the men in our lives for them to understand the privileges and power that they derive from their association with patriarchy and work with us for a more equitable world. So for those women out there who believe that being a feminist equates to being a misandrist, I think that is a misconception. And I believe we need to move away from it because it doesn't serve any purpose.
All right, we'll visit this conversation later because there are one or two things I'd like to refer to. But for now, we'll take a breather. And if you're joining us for the first time, you are welcome to Soul Sisters. Today's edition, we are talking about feminism, the ideal as well as the reality. We will be talking about the progress that has been made in the advocacy for equity or equality, as the case may be. And then we talk about the demand as well as the supply, why there seems to be a limited supply in response to the demand for fairness, and what needs to be done in leveling up, at least in meeting up what is demanded, and many other things. Your thoughts, your questions are totally welcome. WhatsApp line is open to you, 0809-444-0981. Again, WhatsApp line is 0809-444-0981. And my guest is the author of the book, Demand and Supply, as well as the former First Lady, Ekiti State, Her Excellency Erelu Bisi Adeleye Fayemi. Stay with us because we'll be right back. So we are on a short ad break, and when we come back, do you want to say something?
You did not tell me your name, and you didn't introduce yourself when you went online.
My name is Oluwaseun. All right, so yes, my name is Oluwaseun.
Okay, we're still on the break, right?
Yes, we still are.
Okay, so I can give my hair a quick brush.
But you're on YouTube though.
Eh?
You're on YouTube.
I'm on YouTube.
Yes, I
Oh,
mentioned it. We're not live on radio, but we're live on YouTube.
you
So
should have
people,
said that.
I mentioned, I'm sorry, I thought you heard me. I mentioned it.
No, yes, I know you mentioned it. When I asked, are we on a break? You said yes.
Yeah,
So
we're
I
on a
thought we
break
were on
on
a break.
radio.
I thought we were on a break from everything.
Oh, no, no, no. Okay. So even when we go on break on radio, we're still live on YouTube because YouTube gets to have the juicy behind the scenes conversation sometimes.
Okay, I mean, it's okay for them to, as I said, see the juicy, off the record moment. So,
All right.
By definition, is the belief that men and women should have equal rights.
Every woman has got a story to tell, a
Yep.
story about her journey to being a hero against all odds.
When I was just 11 years old, I became a female advocate.
Smooth 98.1 presents Soul Sisters, a discourse on the woman. Now on Smooth 98.1 every Wednesday
Okay.
from 11
And
a.m.
we are back.
Hi, my name is Rita Dominic, and this is Smooth 98.1.
Hello, my name is Oluwaseun Olusegun, and this, like she said, is Smooth 98.1. It's the station that loves music, loves life, loves you. But importantly, between 11 till 11:50 every Wednesday, we discuss issues that affect women, and we call the show Soul Sisters. You're very welcome to be a part of the conversation. I have given a number of ways that you can be a part of it. There is Twitter, there is Instagram, you can send us a DM, and there is WhatsApp line 0809-444-0981. You can also join us on YouTube. So you not only get to see my face and the face of my guest this morning, it means you can also go back to that video later on to play it or share with your family and friends that are not in the same time zone or location with you. So you can drop your comments using the live chat option. And we are talking about feminism, the ideal versus the reality. If you're joining us, well, we have defined what feminism is, what it is not. Feminism is not misandry. So even though the patriarchal standards are being challenged, it does not mean you start to hate the people. So it is not misandry. And my guest is Her Excellency Erelu Bisi Adeleye Fayemi. So back to your journey into feminism, which you said started for as long as you can remember. I'd like to ask, was there a particular event that caused an epiphany, or you just saw things around and you started questioning the norm?
yes, and I've written about this in some of my books. When I was growing up, there were quite a number of women who lived with us in our family, mostly my mom's sisters, aunts. And they had friends in the neighborhood who were their age. So I was always surrounded by these older women, these aunties. And they all had sub stories. There was always someone whose heart had been broken. There was always someone who had been jilted. For those who got married, there was always someone who had been beaten, someone who had been cheated on. There were always things to do with dysfunctional relationships that they had with men in their lives. And whenever I ask the question, why is this happening to these women? Because these women were beautiful women in, both inside and out. And people will tell me, oh, that is what the life of a woman is like. Women don't have a choice. And as young as I was, I remember thinking to myself, but that's not right. That's not fair. Women should have a choice. Women should have a choice to be respected. They should have a choice not to allow idiots or fools into their lives. And women should have a choice to be able to have control over their body. And so I believe that that is where that spark began. And of course, I was supported by a father who thought the world of me and who encouraged me to speak up, to write, and who valued my opinions and kept telling me, any man who does not value what you have to say is not worthy of you. And so that was those were the origins, of my lifelong journey. I've always believed that it's important for women to have choices. Sometimes women make poor choices, but at least let the choices be informed ones and let them learn from the choices if they make mistakes.
Thank you. Still on that journey, I like stories a lot, and I always like to get into the behind the scenes so that I understand where the person is coming from. So, from studying history in Unife, now Obafemi Awolowo University, or from, well, actually, this is me trying to say I also went to Obafemi Awolowo University, but that's by the that's by the way.
Yes,
So,
you went to OAU. I went to Unife, but it
okay.
remains the same great university.
Point taken. But this is a question. So you decided to go full throttle because you had an MA in gender and society from as far back as 1992. And since then, you've been involved in so many work that advocates against gender-based violence, that advocates for women, so literally it's your life's work, the publication, the organizations you've had, even when you were the chair of the National Governors Forum, you were all about this. So when you started seeing this, from when you started the advocacy till now that you've done a lot of work, what can you record as the progress? What would you call the before and the after? Where are we on this feminism journey?
Right. Well, I was asked that question recently, and my response is it's been a story of 10 steps forward and sometimes 10 or 20 back. And sometimes we take 20 steps forward and then we take 10 back. A lot of progress has been made, and I'm really happy about that. But then sometimes things happen and it erodes all the gains you have made or threatens the gains you have made. And I'll give you an example. I was one of the many women's rights activists around the world who participated in the Beijing Conference for Women in 1995. And at the time that the United Nations was closing the document that became known as the Beijing Platform for Action, the issue of the girl child was not on the agenda. It was African women's rights activists, African governments and policymakers who demanded that the girl child be added to the agenda because they felt that if there wasn't a focus on this issue, a generation from then, Africa would suffer the consequences. And so that's how the girl child got added. And there has been tremendous progress over the years. We've seen more girls who have become women get an education. And here in Nigeria, for example, apart from the crisis that we've had in the north due to the insurgency and the conflict and the activities of various terrorist groups that have disrupted the education of girls as well as boys. If you come to southern Nigeria, the enrollment of girls in schools exceeds that of boys in quite a number of places. So we've been able to make the case for girls to go to school, for the rights of girls to an education. But the crisis we have been faced with now is the fact that it's difficult to keep our girls in school because of the increasing levels of sexual exploitation. Our girls are vulnerable on their way to school. They are vulnerable at school, on their way back from school, and in their homes and their communities. We have such a high level of teenage pregnancy. So many girls are dropping out of school. And you know, if you're a poor girl in a rural area and you drop out of school, that's the end of your life as you know it. You spend the rest of your days selling oranges, frying akara under the bridge. And the boys or the man who got you pregnant will carry on with their lives. They get to be the engineers, the lawyers, the doctors, eventually the senators, the ministers, the governors, and the women get left behind. And so we have this crisis with the education of girls and women that we thought we had addressed years ago. Another issue is sexual violence. We struggled to get issues around sexual violence on the agenda years ago. People did not want to pay attention. But it took the COVID pandemic for people to understand what we meant by the fact that women have been dealing with the pandemic for many years. So it's been a case of so many steps forward, so many backward. Look at women and decision making in Nigerian politics. Every time we go through an electoral cycle in this country, the number of women in the National Assembly, for example, dwindles. In the 2019 set, we had roughly 5%. Now it's around 3 point something percent. That's not progress. So yes, there's an increased level of awareness. There's a lot of deep service paid to women's rights and the rights of women to empowerment. But the realities we face in our communities around us is that there is still a huge gender gap, and we need to do something about it.
I'm glad you brought us to that point, because the burning question now is what can be done about it? Oh, before we even get there, why do we have a drop from what it used to be? And yes, we have the awareness that has increased. There is more demand for women being active in policy making. Recently, in the corporate space, in a number of financial institutions, we saw the rise of women to key positions, and we seem to have more of them in the C-suite. But when it concerns policies and politics, rather, it looks like we're having a number dwindling. So what exactly is responsible for that?
So let's go back to where we started. We started talking about patriarchy and its institutions. For as long as our economic, political, social, cultural, religious, and technological institutions are dominated by men, are led by men, dictated by men, defined by men for the benefit of men, we are still going to continue to experience a gender gap and a world in which women will be unequal with men. Yes, a handful of women will break the proverbial glass ceiling, but one woman out of hundreds of thousands really would not make that much of a difference. It's great. One of the things that we have recorded as a success is the large number of role models that we have right now. Role models, mentors, champions who we can point to, and we can say, yes, she's done it. I want to be like her. That's really great for our young girls to see. But it shouldn't be so hard for us to have more women occupy these spaces. And so we need to go back to looking into how we can engage these institutions to ensure that we have a better deal for women. Now, on the issue of what can be done, we need more political will. We need more political will at all levels. So whether we are talking about the policymakers or the politicians, or we are talking about the executives or the opinion molders and leaders, we need people to not only say the right things, we need them to do the right things. And when my husband was governor of Ekiti State, for example, we tried in our own way to show what it means to have political will to back up demands for gender equality and women's empowerment. During my husband's administration, I was able to work with other government officials, the legislature, civil society organizations, to get a total of 7 laws passed to raise the status of women in Ekiti State, as well as 3 major policies. And that work continues with the current administration, the administration of Governor Biodun Yebanji, who is also very gender friendly. If there is no political will from the top, nothing is going to happen at other levels. So political will is what determines the amount of financial, human, material, or technical resources you put behind an issue. And another thing that needs to be done is community engagement. We need to continue to engage our communities, who at the end of the day are custodians of these patriarchal norms and values I speak about. And I spent a lot of time doing this. And that is one way in which change can happen. And there are many who are doing this as well. Engage with religious leaders, traditional rulers, political leaders at community level, and a whole range of actors who need to be convinced to change their mindset and change the way they do things, so that we can really see a difference in the lives of ordinary women and girls.
Thank you. Now, here comes the obvious question, which I would want to simmer, and then we take the answer after this. There have been few women who have been in positions known politically. We've got ministers, we've got senators, and it appeared that things did not go quite as well or as expected, knowing that they were one of the few that eventually made it to such hallowed chambers or such seats. Example, you have Mrs. Madueke, you've got Stella Odua, and many others. Now, the obvious question being, is it that the society is harsher in their criticism of these women, or the fact that they were eventually able to break into such positions meant a greater responsibility was placed on them? So we'll come back to that right after this. If you're joining us for the first time, you are listening to Soul Sisters on Smooth 98.1. We're talking about the ideal versus the reality as touching feminism, the demand and supply for women, and they being in key positions, or maybe the ground being leveled. And then you can join the conversation on YouTube. You can join us on WhatsApp by asking your question. And you can also stream live via the website, which is www.smooth91.fm, to stay with us.
Touching that down. Everyone has got a dream, a shining light trapped within, waiting to break out. Now.
All right, so when we come after the break, we will touch on that, because I think there was a part in the book in your interview where you talked on the fascination or the obsession with our jewelry collection as opposed to other things. So I would want you to go over that and what your take is, especially if it's that to whom much is given, much is expected, or if you didn't do that to a man, why are you doing that to a woman?
TV channel 49. Idol is proudly sponsored by Biggie for every moment, and Techno, stop at nothing. Let's talk football. The most anticipated match when the action kicks in. We go totally in and freaked out here. Bringing you the best of the best, a game-by-game account of magnificent moments in the world of football.
I think there's also another sensitive issue that we'll touch on later, and it is, while we are struggling and advocating for protection of the woman and her safety, especially sexually, there have been pockets of cases where there were false allegations of rape and sexual assault. So how do we also deal with that, and the notion that once there is such a case of sexual violence, rape, assault, the woman should be believed first? You know, there are different schools of thought on that. So we also touch on that later on. Love music and love life. We are Smooth 98.1. It's 29 minutes past 11 o'clock. It's a Wednesday. And if you're a regular, Wednesdays are for the sisters. It's Woman Crush Wednesday. It is Soul Sisters Wednesday, 11 till 11:50 on the station that loves music and loves life. And you're very welcome to join us. My name is Oluwaseun, and we are talking about feminism and so many other things. I hope you find the conversation quite interesting and educative. And as my guest, I have a feminist scholar and activist, a gender and development specialist, a social entrepreneur, a policy advocate, writer, as well as an author of many books, including Where is Your Rapper? Demand and Supply. And she is the former First Lady of Ekiti State, Her Excellency Erelu Bisi Adeleye Fayemi. And she's joining me via Zoom, but you can see her lovely face on YouTube, which is youtube.com/smooth91FM Lagos. So before the breather, we had a question that was simmering, and it's the issue of women who are in public positions, and somehow a case of corruption comes up, and it looks like there is more light, more searchlight beamed on the woman. So is it really a case of more searchlight beamed on her, or it's a case of you have more responsibility since you're one of the few women who got into that, or it's a case of, well, if you're going to stay by the river, you will get wet?
Thank you, Oluwaseun. Well, in 2006, a number of us African feminists got together and we approved what we called the African Feminist Charter. So any of the listeners who are interested, you can Google that. The African Feminist Charter is divided into a number of sections. There is the first section, which is the context, and it provides the definition of feminism as we understand it on the African context, and also a section on individual feminist ethics and institutional feminist ethics, as well as feminist leadership. So it has always been our belief as feminists that when leaders put themselves forward for positions of responsibility, they need to be above board and they need to be able to conduct themselves in ways which are different from the norm. It can't be business as usual like the boys. Because if you have been challenging men for being in control of institutions that are corrupt, that are not accountable, that are not transparent, and that have excluded people, when we as women get into those spaces, we need to take with us an understanding of what it was like to be on the margins, to have decisions made which did not include you or your voice. So there's an expectation that women who occupy certain positions will conduct themselves differently. It does not make every woman who is a public office holder a feminist. No. As a matter of fact, our experience has been to the contrary. But we've however noted, and this is not just in Nigeria, it's all around the world, there are all these double standards when it comes to women in leadership. The example of Madam Alison Madueke that I gave in the interview is a case in point. Maybe one day she'll have her day in court to face the allegations that she has against her. But pending that time, I couldn't help but wonder at the fascination that people had, the authorities had with her jewelry collection, right down to the fact that she had bras that were encrusted with jewels. So I was wondering, how many times did we see the boxers of the men who are under investigation? Or did we see the collection of wristwatches? And one of the former first ladies, they published her shopping list, how she went around the world and used her credit card and, you know, the kinds of things she bought. And it was all listed there. We didn't see anything of the sort when they were investigating the male suspects. So we consider these things to be double standard. So should people get away with siphoning public resources? Absolutely not. People, as I said, need to be accountable. And women who go into these positions, even if they are not biological mothers, they are mothers one way or the other. Every woman after childbearing age is a mother. And so you should not be found to be in a position where resources that are meant to provide healthcare for other women and children, education, security, that is what you're using to buy designer handbags and jewelry. But at the same time, we should avoid the perception that women are being doubly persecuted because they happen, just because they happen to be women, and there's an assumption that because you're a woman, you are likely to be prone to corruption so that you can afford a glamorous lifestyle. I think that is double standards, and we should move away from that. But I think the key message here is men and women should be held accountable if they're holding public office or any position of responsibility that they are in.
Thank you very much. Now, still related to that, when you were talking about the Busola movement, that was the Busola Dakolo movement, when she came forward, and you mentioned that there should be no time frame to which a survivor can speak up about whatever sexual assault story or ugly episode that they've had in the past. Now, there have been cases of women who, let's say the other divide of the Me Too movement, that falsely accused men or turns out after a trial in court or when multiple evidence surfaced, it turns out that it was a false allegation. Now, understanding the sensitivity of still dealing with women who are sometimes not believed, and then the other side juxtaposing that with the cases where we are seeming to have more women who are using the advantage of a woman should first be believed whenever a case of sexual assault or a case of rape comes up. What do you think can be done to maintain that balance without a person, a man in this case, being falsely maybe imprisoned because reputation goes down the line? So how do we strike the balance between the women who falsely accuse and yet getting justice in such?
I think our experience should point us in the direction of studying the numbers. What are the numbers of women and children who come forward to complain of sexual assault and have proven to be liars, compared with those who have cried wolf or accused people wrongly? Those who have made false accusations are few and far between. The vast majority of cases are those who have suffered one form of violation of the other, and either in the immediate or after a long period of time, summon the courage to come forward and say, this has happened to me. And we should not continue to put ourselves in this position where, you see, when a rape victim or a rape survivor comes forward and says, this has happened to me, the onus is on the law enforcement agents to determine what has happened. We should not continue to treat victims as if they did it to themselves or they were the ones who were the cause of their misfortune. Where were you? What were you wearing? Why were you out at 1 in the morning? The 6-month-old baby who was raped or sexually assaulted, what was she wearing? Were her diapers sexy? The 80-year-old woman who was raped on her farm, what was the attraction? Were her wrinkled thighs, attractive to the rapist or what? So the more we put victims in a position where they have to, one of my friends asked out of frustration, does it now mean that women have to go around with cameras in their vaginas for people to actually believe that they suffered an assault? So we should try and make access to justice, access to services easier for women who claim that they have been assaulted. And even the course of the investigation, it turns out that they have perjured themselves and have undermined the integrity, of an innocent person. Then they should face the full wrath of the law, because there are laws against perjury, character assassination, and the like. But as I said, let us look at the numbers. How many cases have we found where the women or the children were not telling the truth? I would like to err on the side of, the numbers. It's just this way in which people come to us and say, yes, we know that many men beat their wives, but there are wives who beat their husbands or even kill their husbands. I would say it's true. There are women who beat their husbands, and men have died at the hands of women. But let us look at the body count. Where is the body count the highest?
Questions that demand answers, but maybe we'll get some later on. We have to take another reader, and when we come back, we will talk about something you mentioned in your introduction. You said if the feminist movement wants to see more gains, it should be prepared to seek allies in strange places. I'd like more clarification on what that is right after this. If you're joining us for the first time, this is Smooth 98.1. Soul Sister is the name of the show. And if you have any question, you can send it to WhatsApp 0809-444-0981. Stay with us. We have 10 more minutes and we have some questions from listeners.
The next level of goodness. Is it when it is cooked with no seasoning cubes for that? sumptuous taste. When you serve it with the correct Nigerian salad, carrot, lettuce, and a bit of kidney beans. It's both. Season your jollof with the rich taste of Knorr cubes and serve with plenty of vegetables. So go ahead and
There is definitely. Oh, we're almost back. Okay. Hopefully, we have the time to take the questions.
You're listening to Smooth.
You're welcome. It's Soul Sisters on Smooth 98.1. We are talking about feminism, the journey, the progress made, the many steps taken forward, why we're taking some steps backward. And we have our guest as our guest this morning, a feminist activist, as well as policy advocate and social change philanthropy practitioner, and most importantly, author and writer. She is Her Excellency Irelu Bisi Adeleye Fayemi. That is the wife of the former state governor of Ekiti State. Now we are talking about feminism again and again. But I have a question before we go back to talking about mentoring, because I think that is one thing that is vital. Sometimes I have conversations with the older generation and the younger ones, and it looks like there is such a gap in there. So we need to address how there can be a breach. But before then, I have a question from Musti, who says, good morning. Could having more female recruits in the police and other law enforcement agencies be of help? So when such cases occur, the officers take it to specialists who have been trained to handle this. It's not like women officers too may not harass, but this speaks to lack of training.
Absolutely. The uniformed services are sadly, bastions of patriarchal power and control. And we applaud the few women who have managed to find some space in those places. And so it would be great to be able to rely on them to provide as much support as they can. But they can only do that if their senior officers, who are mostly male, provide them with the opportunities to get the required training and offer the assistance that is needed. And I must say that for those who have worked with the police in many of the states, we have come across a lot of very dedicated policemen as well, policewomen as well as men. And this goes a long way in ensuring access to justice and continuity of support. And we would like to see this, however, intensified and made an integral part of the police force in particular. And as far as those services are concerned, a lot of things only happen if there are directives from the top. But if from the top there's no political will and there's indifference to all these issues or just rhetoric and lip service, then nothing much will be done. So what I would say to that is, let us intensify our advocacy at all levels to try and get the police, the army, civil defense, all these services to encourage the women in those in their ranks to take leadership on these issues and support the government and civil society as we try and make life better for survivors of violent assault.
I think this is leading me to your book, Where's Your Rapper? Because the question I have on my mind is, what's the obligation of a woman to another woman, if there is any at all? What's the obligation of the older women to the younger women, if there is any at all?
We all have an obligation to one another, regardless of our age. I discovered on my feminist journey that there is such huge value in intergenerational organizing. A lot of times you come across young people who say, let all these old aunties and mommies go and sit down, it's our time. And a lot of older aunties and mommies saying, oh, these the little girls, they're too spoiled, they don't know anything. That is not how a movement for change operates. That's not how it works. My experience has been, I have learned a lot from older women who have mentored me, women whose names I can mention from around the world. And it has been my privilege to provide that same support to another generation of women as well. There are things that a younger feminist can do that another feminist can't. And there are things that another feminist can do that a younger feminist can't. So what needs to happen is we need to acknowledge what our strengths are and what our challenges are and work together. The rapper metaphor that you mentioned, where's the rapper? The story that resonated with people around what happened, the story I told about what happened with women in the marketplace in Uganda, where a woman went into labor.
Go ahead, please.
Where a woman went into labor and women in the marketplace rallied around her. And those who knew what to do started to attend to her to help her deliver the baby because there was obviously not enough time to get her to a healthcare facility. And the other women in the market who were not helping with the direct delivery of the baby, they took out their wrappers and they held up their wrappers to shield the woman, to protect her, to provide her with privacy. So those wrappers for me, they signify certain things: compassion, respect, dignity, a duty of care. That is what we owe one another as women, regardless of age. And those women who stood up for that woman in the marketplace would definitely not have been of the same age. There would have been younger women, middle-aged women, older women, but they all rallied around a woman who needed help. So we need to ask ourselves, wherever you are as a woman, young, older, there's something you can do to provide a wrapper for the next person. You can help another woman with babysitting. You can help her pay school fees for her children. You can help pay her rent. You can buy her additional foodstuff if you are going to buy your foodstuff. Or if you don't have the financial means, a prayer will go a long way, or a shoulder to cry on. But don't let the sun go down without you bringing out a wrapper for the next person. And the way it works is the more wrappers you bring out for people, the more will come out for you the day you need them.
That's such a beautiful analogy. The more wrappers you bring out, well, the more you'd have on the days you need them. That is beautiful. So I guess at the end of the day, women do support women if they choose to support women or if they realize the importance of supporting women. So back to that question about the feminism allies. You said if the feminist movement wants to see more gains, it should be prepared to seek allies in strange places. What does that mean?
Well, for those of us of a particular generation, we spent a lot of time trying to actually really understand what feminism was about, what the movement was about, what we were trying to achieve. And feminist spaces, women-only spaces, were so important to us. And we did not consider it to be a priority to worry about what men were thinking or bringing men into the work that we were doing. We ourselves needed to be able to figure out exactly what we needed and what change needed, what change we needed to see. So because of my journey that has led me from feminist spaces in civil society into public service, the government, and so on, I discovered a range of allies who I felt I did not have the capacity to reach out to before, but because of the space I was occupying, then there was that option available to me. So for example, working with men who at the end of the day happen to be mostly the policymakers and the decision makers. I spoke to you about championing bills in Ekiti State and getting certain policies passed. We had quite a number of women in the state cabinet, but majority were still men. We had a number of women in the State House of Assembly. The vast majority were still men. And so I had to find a way of working with men, convincing them, persuading them, get them on board so that they understand what role they have to play in terms of, working towards a common goal. And then when my husband became the chairman of the Nigerian Governors Forum, that made me the chair of the Nigerian Governors Wives Forum. It's now known as Nigerian Governors Spouses Forum. And it meant that I was responsible for working with other first ladies around the country and coordinating our efforts so that we could do joint things together, in addition to whatever it was we were doing in our respective states. In the year 2020, during the COVID pandemic, we came together to do work around sexual and gender-based violence, because we believe that that is something that we could all work on together, because we were all experiencing more or less the same thing in our states. And it was amazing how these sisters rallied round. And at the time that we had, at the time that we started doing that work together, the first thing we did was to put pressure on the Nigeria Governors Forum, our husbands, to declare a state of emergency on sexual and gender-based violence. And at that time, only 13 states in Nigeria had passed the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Law in June 2020. As we speak, in fact, by the end of, by December 2023, 35 out of 36 states in Nigeria now have legislation against sexual violence. The only state in Nigeria that does not have legislation is Kano State. And that was mostly due to the hard work of First Ladies working side by side with other government officials and women's rights organizations, civil society organizations, donor partners, the Federal Ministry of Women Affairs, to get these laws passed. Now, getting the laws passed is one thing, having the laws implemented is another. So that's where we are right now. But the fact remains is these are allies that people would not have thought of before. So I would like to encourage us to think of, spaces where we did not have allies before, in the past, but now we have people who understand what it means to bring about change, at a large scale, and let us all work together. There are some who will discourage us and want to set us back. Let's not waste time on those ones. There are many, I hear a whole lot of people who go online and a lot of, dinosaurs, who make all kinds of disparaging comments about women. Women are only good for the kitchen in this day and age. If a woman has risen to the position of bank manager, it means she must have done something to get there. All kinds of nonsense. Don't let's be discouraged by them. Don't let's listen to them. The only way now for women of all ages is up. Because women like me did not work this hard. We did not come this far for our daughters to continue serving entitled and ungrateful partners the way it used to happen in the past. No.
Thank you very much for your lucid thoughts, Your Excellency. It was a lovely chat with you. And I have a testimony from Ian on WhatsApp who says, listening to this show, I have an updated, reviewed, and modified impression about feminism. I owe this to you and your guest. I am happy I listened in. I wish many of my so-called feminist lady friends could also listen in and be both educated and informed. Please say my love and respect to the guest. Much respect. Well, guess what, Ian? You can find this on YouTube and you can share with your friends, those lady friends who have a skewed view of feminism. And you can also get to know more about the feminist movement that has Her Excellency Erelu Bisi Adile Yefayemi at the heart of it. And speaking of which, your many books and social media platforms, how can people get to, follow your work online?
Right. Well, people can follow my work on all my social media handles: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Yes.
All right. The handle is, I don't know the full name on.
Oh, BCA Fayemi.
Okay, BCA
Fayemi.
Fayemi. All right.
Yeah,
so
on all the handles, yes.
All right, so that is BCA Fayemi. In case you're looking for her on our social media platforms, you would have seen, you can't miss it, I believe, BCA Fayemi, and you will see the many things she's done there from Instagram to Twitter and other social media platforms. Thank you very much for being my guest this morning and the many explanation that you have provided on feminism and what it is and what it is not. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting me. Right. And just by way of summary again for the listeners, especially those who joined in late, feminism is not about women hating men. Feminism is about a fairer world for everyone. It's about a world in which women have power, have a voice, have dignity and respect. And women are not their own worst enemy. And any man who is trying to deprive women of any of these rights is a woman's enemy. And I'm sure most men out there are not women's enemies. So I'd like to encourage women to continue to seek the truth, continue to read. If you are able to, continue to write and continue to stay focused. Take care.
Thank you. The demand for increased participation of women in different spheres is definitely high, and hopefully the supply is met. Hopefully one of these days we rise up to the supply. Thank you. On that note, we've come to the end of the chat for today. Next week, we'll go again from 11 till 11:50 right here on Smooth 98.1. Ian says, thank you for telling us that you don't hate us. We have had a lot of stuff. That's so warming to hear. I'll tell the boys in the brotherhood.
But they should do right by women.
Okay, that's important.
We will not hate you if you do right by women. If you don't do right by women, then you hear from us.
Reminds me of the song of Aretha Franklin, do right woman, do right man. Well, we have to go. Bye now.
Hey, bye.
Oh, that was so good. Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me. I had fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I look forward to meeting you one of these days.
You said, ma'am?
I said, I look forward to meeting you one of these days.
I look forward to it as well. So share the link with Toby in case you'd want to have it, or maybe make cuts of it later on for social media.
Okay. All right.
All right, ma'am.
Okay.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.